I suppose I wanted to touch on a couple of issues that have been raised by other deputies already in this debate, and I've been fortunate to have the time to sit in for a little longer than usual. And I suppose the first, and before we talk about any issue, the most important thing to come out of this European Council meeting, of course, is the final agreement on the multiannual financial framework and the funding that it will provide over the next few years throughout the Union. And I think where we see real importance and power for this is, of course, in the COVID Recovery Fund and the collective desire and will of the entire Union to see an equal recovery across the Union. It's so vitally important for every member state, not just those that have been the most impacted by the COVID pandemic, but all of those, because we all are in this together. We all have that shared responsibility, and the ability now of the European Council or the European Central Bank to issue Eurobonds is so important on the future model of the European Union in providing that level of solidarity amongst member states. But of course, through that COVID recovery needs that collective approach, as other deputies have mentioned, to a proper and equitable rollout of a vaccine, be it one of the 5 vaccines that have been secured by the European Commission heretofore. And I welcome the government's vaccine rollout plan announced yesterday, and I look forward to seeing that being taken up on a European level, because I think an element of reality needs to be added to this debate. A lot of people got very excited a week or so ago when the UK launched its vaccine slightly prematurely, and people said, well, this is the start of it. But if we look at the actual number of vaccines that were made available, they were in the tens of thousands as opposed to the tens of millions. And I think we need to be realistic and fair and straight with people that all these vaccines aren't going to come in the next fortnight, aren't coming in the next month, and the personal responsibility that all of us have to social distancing, mask wearing, limiting our contacts, hand hygiene and everything is so important, not just through the festive period, but it will be for many weeks and indeed months to come. The second aspect of this budget, which I think is so important, and it really shows the power and strength of acting as a union of 27 member states rather than simply as one individual member state, indeed a smaller member state, as is the case of Ireland, is in relation to the Green New Deal and the very ambitious targets that have been set by the Union, and the importance therefore of this government to continue to work with European partners to pursue this. And that can be through the Celtic Interconnector linking Ireland and France for energy supply, or it can be drawing down the resources of the European Investment Bank to have proper approaches to the green development of our economy. Now, the final aspect, and it's a slightly difficult one for those of us a member of Fine Gael, as was pointed out by Deputy Smith in his reference to the European People's Party and the ongoing connection to that of Fidesz. And I want to put this very clear on the floor of the Dáil, that whilst Fidesz is currently suspended from the European People's Party, it is my very strong feeling that they should be absolutely expelled, and that process should be expedited. And I think when it comes to the rule of law, the actions of both the Hungarian and Polish government have been absolutely deplorable. And in some ways I regret, whilst I welcome the compromise and welcome the funding stream coming through the budget, I do regret that the rule of law aspects of this budget aren't strong enough. And in saying that, Minister, I do want to pay credit to you for your comments at the IAA's LGBTI plus event this week. And so it's important to see Ireland standing at the top table of the EU when it comes to the rule of law, when it comes to the rights, be it of women, be it of our LGBTI plus community, be it of minorities, be it of anyone that comes in, that we truly believe in that Europe of equals and equal opportunities. One aspect that hasn't been really referred to in much depth is the conclusions of the European Council when it comes to security, when it comes to the commitment of the European Council to double down the levels of police and judicial cooperation across the Union. And that comes to areas such as data sharing and such as the sharing of information when it comes to dealing with dissident terrorist groups, and we know unfortunately a lot about them on this island, but also with the fundamentalist terrorists that have been active across Europe, and we always should send solidarity to all member state colleagues who've been victims of that any terrorist atrocity. But also we look at organised crime. And we look at, and we're debating legislation later on the Dáil when when we discuss money laundering and counterfeiting and how that is being factored into the activities of so many organised crime groups across the continent. And organised criminals simply do not recognise borders. And we've seen that both in form of money laundering, but the new approaches to using cryptocurrency. And we look yesterday at the conviction of a certain individual in the Irish courts of money laundering to fund an ongoing drug cartel's activity in this state. Not only activity in this state, but is fueled by narcotics and weapons and information and crucially funding from across the European Union. If we are absolutely serious about tackling organised crime and the high-level criminals who are absolutely terrorising our streets and piling misery through so many households, pumping it full of drugs, full of weapons, full of extortion, full of violence, we need to see that European level of cooperation. And we need to ensure, as I move on to our next point, that the level of security cooperation between Ireland, but the EU as a whole, with the United Kingdom, is maintained going forward in the post-Brexit era. Because we've seen, not just in relation to Northern Ireland, where the House of Commons Intelligence and Security Committee still sees the level of dissident terrorism, see the level of threat of dissident terrorism as severe, but we also see the importance of cross-territorial communication and cooperation between police forces and security agencies when it comes to tackling organised crime. And when we come to Brexit, obviously within the European Council, I'm probably going to devote about 90 seconds, which isn't too much less to how much discussion there was at the European Council meeting in relation to Brexit. I believe it was 10 minutes all in over dinner. The Minister might be able to go into a bit more detail, not necessarily of the formal discussions, but the informal discussions that happened on the margins, either between himself with his other ministerial colleagues, with the Taoiseach or with officials, in relation to the state of play of Brexit negotiations. We welcome the comments by President von der Leyen this morning to the European Parliament that there is a pathway, albeit a narrow pathway, to a Brexit deal. And I think it behoves all the actors, British or European, in this process to dedicate every energy in the coming days to securing a Brexit deal. A deal that, to be honest, won't be good for Ireland, won't be good for the EU, it won't be good for the United Kingdom. However, it will be a deal that limits the damage, because a no-deal scenario is so unbearably awful for all actors. It is important that we secure, albeit what will be a very thin deal, because in having a trading deal with the UK is of vital importance to so many workers and businesses across this country. I look forward to contributing late tomorrow evening, a bit more on Brexit preparedness. But in the coming days, Minister, I really do hope, even if we do go on recess for Christmas, that members of the Oireachtas, both houses, are kept fully abreast of any negotiations and indeed, hopefully, conclusions to any possible Brexit agreement. Gur maith, Gaeilge.